Buy an island. Escape everything. Live free forever. Richard Branson paid $180,000 for Necker Island in 1979. Today, one night on that same island costs $78,000. That's not appreciation. That's a business model. Everyone pictures private island ownership the same way. A lone beach. No neighbors. No bills. Total freedom. Here's what actually happens. You buy the land. Then the real spending starts. Water doesn't arrive by pipe. It has to be manufactured, using diesel-powered desalination plants that can cost over $200,000 a year in fuel alone. Power doesn't arrive by grid. You build your own generation and storage from scratch before you build anything else. Staff doesn't commute in. They live on-site, permanently on your payroll, every single day of the year. Necker Island currently employs over 100 full-time staff, for an island that sleeps 54 guests total. That's roughly 2 staff members for every guest bed on the property. So the fantasy of escaping the system turns out to require building an entire private version of the system, at your own expense, with no municipal backup if it fails. And that's before a single hurricane shows up. The global market backs this up. Islands trade for as little as $405 an acre in parts of South America, and as much as $313,000 an acre in parts of Asia. A 770-fold spread on the exact same asset class. Location isn't the only variable. What you're actually buying is different in every single case. A $74,000 island in Nicaragua gets you raw land and a dock. A $180,000 island in the British Virgin Islands, decades later, became a $100 million hospitality brand. Same category of purchase. Completely different financial outcome, depending entirely on what happens after the deed transfers. This isn't a story about rich people buying beaches. It's a story about what real estate becomes when there's no neighbor, no municipal service, and no shared infrastructure to lean on. Every cost that a mainland property splits with the city, a private island absorbs alone. Here's the pivot. Private island ownership isn't one business. It's 2, wearing the same marketing photo. The first is the vanity asset. A buyer purchases land, builds a house, and spends money with no expectation of ever earning it back. This is a hobby with a 9-figure price tag attached. The second is the boutique resort. A buyer purchases land, builds infrastructure, and rents access to strangers at extreme margins. This is a hospitality company that happens to be surrounded by water. Most buyers think they're purchasing the first. Most successful owners end up running the second, whether they plan to or not. Larry Ellison bought 98% of Lanai, Hawaii, in 2012 for a reported $300 million. He didn't buy a vacation home. He bought a company town, 2 Four Seasons resorts, the island's only grocery store, its only gas station, and its local newspaper. David Copperfield bought Mashupke in 2006 for $50 million, then spent another $35 million converting it into a bookable resort. Ranson's $180,000 purchase became Virgin Limited Edition, a hospitality brand with a nightly rate now in the tens of thousands of dollars. Even failed vanity purchases prove the point. Johnny Depp bought Little Halls Pond Cay in the Bahamas for $3.6 million and never converted it into a functioning revenue property. A pure cost center with no offsetting income stream. That distinction matters more than the purchase price ever does. A $3.6 million island run, as a vanity asset, can cost more per year to maintain than a $50 million island run as a resort. The resort at least generates revenue against its own fixed costs. Vanity assets don't. Ownership without a business model doesn't reduce spending. It just removes the income side of the ledger entirely, leaving every single expense uncovered. 3 operators, 3 decades, 1 pattern. Raw land converts into a leveraged hospitality asset, whether or not the buyer ever intended to run a hotel in the first place. The buyers who resist that conversion are the ones who lose money every single year they hold the asset. Ellison's case shows the scale that vanity spending can reach before it turns commercial. His personal fortune sits around $90 billion, meaning the $300 million Lanai purchase represented a fraction of 1% of his total wealth. That changes the math entirely. For Ellison, Lanai doesn't need to break even. For nearly every other buyer on this list, it does. The median household income on Lanai itself is roughly $59,000 a year. A reminder that even a company town business model runs through real local economics, not just billionaire spreadsheets. Acquisition price is the smallest number in this entire business. At the bottom of the market, A titled quarter-acre island in Nicaragua's Atlanta de Granada currently lists for $74,000. A developed half-acre parcel on Panama's Isla San Cristobal runs $40,000 to $99,000, already connected to basic infrastructure. In North America, undeveloped lake islands in Nova Scotia and Ontario start around $200,000 to $273,000, seasonal use only. At the top of the market, Ellison paid $300 million for Lanai. Jumbie Bay in Antigua sold for $30 million at 135 acres. Musha Cay was listed at one point for $17 million before its full development. Branson's original asking price on Necker was $6 million. He negotiated it down to $180,000 on one condition: build a resort within 4 years. That single condition is the real cost driver in most Caribbean and Pacific sales. Governments routinely attach development clauses to island transfers, which forces buyers directly into construction spending they may not have planned for. Branson spent $10 million building Necker's first resort infrastructure, inside that 4-year deadline. Hopperfield spent $35 million developing Musha Cay, on top of his $50 million purchase, a 70% markup in construction costs alone before a single guest checked in. Ellison has committed to spending hundreds of millions more on Lanai, rebuilding the island's power grid around solar infrastructure from the ground up. Permits add another layer on every project. Environmental review, marine construction licenses, and import duties on building materials all stack onto the base construction cost. Together, they can add 15% to 30% onto any Caribbean or Pacific build, according to island real estate analysts. None of this includes a dock, an airstrip, staff housing, or a desalination plant. Those are separate line items, and on most islands, all for a mandatory before a single paying guest arrives. Mid-market listings show the same pattern at smaller scale. Little Ragged Island in the Bahamas, a 2-acre parcel, lists at $2.5 million, largely undeveloped. Pink Pearl Island in Belize, at 2.4 acres, lists at $1.95 million, also undeveloped. Neither price includes a single building. Both are simply the cost of entry, before construction spending even begins. That's the pattern across every price tier in this market. The listing price buys land and a location. Every dollar of actual usable infrastructure gets built separately, on top, at the buyer's ongoing expense. Private islands don't get conventional mortgages. Most sell for cash, because banks won't lend against an asset with no comparable sales data and no reliable resale buyer. That single fact changes who can play this game. It filters out anyone who isn't already liquid for 7 or 8 figures before the first offer is made. It also means the financing risk on this asset class shifts almost entirely onto insurance, not debt. On September 6, 2017, Hurricane Irma hit the British Virgin Islands as a Category 5 storm, with sustained winds of 185 miles per hour. Branson and his team rode out the storm inside the Great House's concrete wine cellar, along with the island's rescued wildlife. The Great House itself was destroyed. Branson rebuilt it, largely self-funding the reconstruction, rather than relying on a single insurer to absorb the full loss. That's a common outcome across the region, where standard hurricane policies carry deductibles of 2% to 5% of insured value. On a $100 million-plus asset, a 5% deductible alone runs $5 million, paid out of pocket before insurance covers a single additional dollar of damage. After the 2017 season, several BVI area insurers restricted or fully withdrew hurricane coverage, pushing island owners towards specialty underwriters charging premiums well above mainland Florida rates. Florida's own claims data shows the scale of that risk. Insurers denied 53% of residential claims after Hurricane Helene and 39% after Hurricane Milton, according to state regulators. Even distressed island assets get bought under cash terms, not financed debt. The pair of islands once owned by Jeffrey Epstein sold in 2023 for $60 million to a billionaire investor planning a luxury resort. It was a straight cash acquisition of a legally troubled asset. No lender was willing to touch the collateral. That's the real financing structure in this market. Not a loan you repay monthly, but a catastrophic risk premium you pay every single year, indefinitely, with no guarantee your insurer stays in the market past next season. Hurricane damage nationally averages $23 billion per storm since 1980, according to federal disaster data, and that number keeps climbing as construction costs rise. More than 7.7 million homes across hurricane-prone regions now sit inside Category 5 storm surge zones, representing $2.3 trillion in projected reconstruction value, per insurance industry estimates. Private islands sit disproportionately inside those zones by definition, since they're surrounded entirely by the water that produces storm surge in the first place. Reconstruction costs alone run $200 to $250 per square foot in hurricane-prone coastal counties, before accounting for marine transport of materials to an island with no bridge access. Every one of those figures applies with extra force to island property, where a barge delivery replaces a truck delivery, and every contractor charges a remoteness premium on top of standard labor rates. Specialty insurers who still cover remote island property typically price premiums at 1% to 3% of total insured value per year, according to island brokers. That means a $50 million resort can carry an annual insurance bill of $500,000 to $1.5 million before a single claim is ever filed. That premium is effectively a permanent, unavoidable line of financing on the asset, paid whether or not a storm ever arrives that season. Skip a year of payment, and the entire capital investment sits fully exposed to the next named storm. Some owners respond by self-insuring instead, setting aside cash reserves equal to a year or more of rebuilding costs. That approach only works for buyers who can absorb a multi-million-dollar loss without touching operating cash. For everyone else, the specialty premium isn't optional. It's the price of staying in the business at all. Ownership doesn't end at construction. It restarts every single morning, whether or not a guest is present. Necker Island runs over 100 staff year-round: engineers, a wildlife conservation manager, water sports teams, and a guest services division, for a maximum of 54 guests on site. Fuel for desalination and backup generators is a fixed, unavoidable monthly cost, since there is no municipal water or power line running to a private island. Insurance, as covered, is a second fixed cost, and one that's climbing every year across the entire Caribbean and Gulf Basin, not falling. Government levies stack directly on top of operating costs. The Bahamas charges a 12% room tax on every private island booking, collected the same way as any standard hotel stay. Security is its own separate budget line, particularly for high net worth or publicly recognizable owners who draw unwanted attention. Maintenance on tropical infrastructure runs faster than mainland property, because salt air corrodes metal fixtures, humidity rots exposed wood, and every storm season tests the entire building envelope directly. Property taxes apply too, in most jurisdictions, layered on top of whatever import duties were paid during construction. Food and supplies carry a remoteness markup as well. Every non-local ingredient, spare part, or piece of equipment arrives by boat or small aircraft, adding freight cost on top of the retail price paid at the point of origin. Waste management is its own budget line, since there's no municipal collection service. Sewage treatment, recycling, and general waste removal all have to be engineered and staffed independently, on-site, permanently. Add these together, and a fully staffed private island resort can carry 7 figures in fixed annual operating costs before a single guest checks in for the year. None of these costs scale down when the island sits empty for a month. Private island with 0 bookings still pays its full staff, fuel, insurance, and tax bill on schedule. That fixed cost structure is what turns an empty island from a lifestyle asset into a recurring monthly liability, regardless of who's actually staying there. Smaller, boutique-scale islands under $10 million don't escape this pattern. They just run it at a smaller absolute number. Industry data on that segment shows typical occupancy rates between 45% and 65% across a full year, with nightly rates ranging from $750 to $1,800. Run the math on the low end. 45% occupancy at $750 a night generates roughly $123,000 a year in gross revenue, before staff, fuel, insurance, taxes, or a single maintenance bill. That's before a single storm season tests the roof. Even at boutique scale, the fixed cost floor rarely drops much below 6 figures annually, which means break-even is a real risk, not a hypothetical one. This is where 4 owners solve the same fixed cost problem in 4 completely different ways. Case 1. Necker Island's yield management model. Branson's default rate is the full island buyout, historically priced above $100,000 a night for up to 34 adults and additional children. But full island buyouts don't fill every week on the calendar. So Necker runs celebration weeks. Set weeks, mostly in the off-season. where individual rooms sell instead of the whole island, starting near $16,460 per couple for 4 nights. That's the same fixed asset, sold 2 different ways, to capture both the ultra-high-end buyout market and a broader luxury travel segment during slower periods of the year. The math behind celebration weeks is simple. A room that would otherwise sit empty in the off-season instead generates $4,115 a night per couple, at 4-night minimums. That's a fraction of the $78,000 a night full buyout rate, but it's far more than zero, and it keeps staff employed during the exact weeks when a full buyout is least likely to book. Case 2. Musha K's all-or-nothing exclusivity model. Copperfield never sells rooms individually. Every booking covers the entire 700-acre archipelago, for one party only, with a mandatory 4-night minimum. Pricing starts near $37,000 a night for 12 guests, and climbs toward $57,000 a night as group size rises to the 24-guest cap. That structure rewards larger groups on a per-person basis. A 24-guest booking runs roughly $2,185 per person, cheaper than a 12-guest booking at $3,083 per person. It pushes every reservation toward maximum group size, and therefore maximum total revenue per stay. Case 3. Lanai's diversified company town model. Ellison doesn't run one hospitality product. He owns 2 Four Seasons resorts, the island's grocery store, its only gas station, a former airline stake, and its local newspaper. Revenue comes from hotel guests, but also from nearly every dollar a resident or tourist spends anywhere on the island. Ellison owns most of the commercial real estate those dollars pass through on their way to being spent. It's the least glamorous model of the 4, and financially the most diversified, since a downturn in hotel bookings doesn't sink every revenue stream at the same time. The housing market on Lanai reflects that control directly. As of recent listings, only a single home was available for sale on the entire island, priced at $7.9 million. When one owner controls nearly all the commercial and residential real estate on a landmass, scarcity itself becomes a revenue lever, independent of hotel occupancy rates entirely. That's a model unavailable to smaller buyers. It only works at the scale where one owner effectively becomes the local economy. Case 4. The subdivision and resale model. Not every private island owner runs a hotel at all. Some run land banking instead, treating the island purely as a real estate inventory to break apart. Panama's Isla San Cristobal has been subdivided over decades into individually titled half-acre lots, sold off to separate buyers for $40,000 to $99,000 each. The original developer never operates a single resort on that island. Instead, profit comes from selling access to island living in smaller, more affordable pieces. The same subdivision margin strategy, used on any mainland development, applied here to a tropical setting with a scarcity premium attached. The Bahamas Out Islands run a version of this too. A 2.5-acre parcel in Eleutheran, with 300 feet of shoreline, currently lists under $10 million, alongside residency incentives designed to attract exactly this kind of buyer. Every subdivided lot sold is a smaller, faster transaction than a single resort sale. That means this model returns capital faster, even if the total ceiling stays lower than a Musha K or a Necker. For models, for different relationships between fixed costs and incoming revenue, the thread connecting every one of them, nobody profits from simply owning the raw land. They profit from what gets built on top of it, and who has sold access to it afterward. Strip away the marketing, and every case here tells the same story. Branson's $180,000 became a hospitality brand. Copperfield's $50 million became a booking calendar. Ellison's $300 million became a real estate portfolio disguised as a hometown. None of them bought silence. All of them bought a second job, with worse commute options and higher insurance premiums than anything they left behind. The private island was never really property. It's a hospitality company with unusually good scenery and unusually unforgiving logistics.